I've spent 30 years in the tech trenches, and I've seen brilliant men go broke because they were brave in their hearts, but illiterate in their math. They think taking a risk is a gamble, when in reality, risk is just a variable you engineer. If you want to change your life, you don't need more motivation. You need a better equation. Let me describe the man I'm talking to. He's disciplined. He wakes up early. He works hard. He reads the books, listens to the podcasts, does the reps. He's not lazy. He's not distracted. He's not unfocused. By every visible measure, this man is doing the right things, and yet he's broke. Or if not broke, stuck. Earning the same number he earned 3 years ago. Running the same hamster wheel at a slightly higher speed. Watching less disciplined, less intelligent men pass him like he's standing still. This man is everywhere. He fills the comments sections of every Stoicism video on YouTube. He's the guy who can quote Marcus Aurelius, but can't explain why his bank account doesn't reflect his work ethic. He's consumed 700 hours of mindset content, and it hasn't moved the needle 1 inch on his financial reality. And the reason, the specific technical mathematical reason, is that he's been taking the wrong kind of bets. Not morally wrong, mathematically wrong. Here's the distinction that changes everything. There are 2 types of bets a man can make with his time, his money, and his energy. Symmetric bets and asymmetric bets. Most men, including most disciplined men, take symmetric bets exclusively. And symmetric bets are a mathematical death sentence for wealth creation. A symmetric bet is any bet where the potential upside is roughly equal to the potential downside. You risk $1 to make $1. You trade an hour of labor for an hour's wage. You invest $50,000 in a business that might return $50,000 or might lose $50,000. The payoff matrix is balanced. Heads you win, tails you lose, and the magnitude is the same on both sides. Now on the surface, this sounds fair, reasonable even. Your grandfather took symmetric bets his whole life and did fine. He traded 40 years of labor for a pension and a paid-off house and called it a good deal. And in his economy, it was a good deal because the institutions backing that deal, corporations, governments, pension funds, the entire post-war economic infrastructure, were stable enough to honor the contract. You gave them your time. They gave you security. Symmetric, but reliable. That contract is dead. I don't need to convince you of this. You can feel it in your bones. The pension is gone. The 40-year career at one company is gone. The guaranteed return on a college degree is gone. The institutions that underwrote symmetric bets for your grandfather are in various stages of collapse. And if you're still making symmetric bets in an era of institutional decay, you're not being disciplined. You're being mathematically illiterate in a game that has fundamentally changed its rules. This is where asymmetric risk math, from my book Rig the Game, enters the picture. And the concept is so simple, it's almost offensive that nobody taught it to you in school. An asymmetric bet is any bet where the potential downside is capped and known, but the potential upside is uncapped and theoretically infinite. You risk $1 to make 100. You invest a weekend to build something that could generate revenue for a decade. You spend 3 months learning a skill that positions you for an opportunity worth 10 years of your current salary. The downside is small, defined, and survivable. The upside is large, undefined, and potentially life-changing. Let me make this concrete. I'll use a tech example because it's my world, but the principle is universal. A few years ago, one of my mentees spent 2 weekends, roughly 30 hours of his time, building a small automation tool that solved a recurring problem for mid-sized accounting firms. The total cost was his time plus about $40 in hosting fees. That was the downside. Capped, known, survivable. He wasn't going to lose his house, his marriage, or his health over 30 hours and $40. He launched it quietly. Nothing happened for 3 weeks. Then a firm in Ohio found it, liked it, and told 2 other firms. Within 6 months, that tool was generating $11,000 a month in recurring revenue. Within 18 months, a software company acquired it for a number I don't have permission to share, but I can tell you it was 7 figures. 30 hours and $40, 7 figures. That's not luck. That's not hustle. That's asymmetric math. The downside was trivially small. The upside was theoretically unbounded. And the only reason this man was in position to take that bet is because he understood the equation. Now compare that to what the disciplined man does. The disciplined man puts his head down at a job that pays him $110,000 a year. He works 60 hours a week. He's excellent at what he does. His downside is capped. He's not going to lose money by going to work. But here's what he doesn't see. His upside is also capped. He will never make more than 15 or 20% above his current salary in that role, no matter how hard he works. He is taking a symmetric bet with his entire life, trading time for a proportional return that can never exceed a ceiling set by someone else. The math is clean and it is brutal. 40 years of symmetric bets produce a linear outcome. 40 years of asymmetric bets produce an exponential one. The inputs look similar. The outputs look like they come from different planets. Let me put it another way, so it really sinks in. 2 men start at 25. Both are smart. Both are disciplined. Both work 60 hours a week. Man A takes symmetric bets his entire career. He climbs the ladder, gets the promotions, goes from 70,000 to 90 to 110 to 130 over 15 years. Good trajectory, respectable. At 40, he's making 150, and he's exhausted because every dollar required his direct presence and effort. The line on his earnings graph is straight, and it's starting to flatten. Man B takes the same starting position, but commits to asymmetric bets alongside his day job. The first 3 fail. The 4th produces a small side income. The 7th explodes. By 35, he has a revenue source that doesn't require his presence. By 40, he's earning what Man A earns, but half of it comes from an asset he built, not from hours he trades. The line on his graph has a curve, and curves, over time, destroy lines. That's not philosophy. That's compound math. And compound math is the only force in economics that the disciplined man should worship. So why don't more men take asymmetric bets? 2 reasons, and both of them are structural, not psychological. Reason 1, they can't afford the downside even when it's small. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, 30 hours of free time doesn't exist. $40 in hosting fees is a real expense. The capped downside of an asymmetric bet is only capped if it doesn't threaten your survival. And this is where structural stability, from my book Iron Logic, becomes a prerequisite. You cannot take asymmetric bets without a chaos buffer. 6 to 12 months of liquidity sitting in an account you don't touch for anything other than survival. That buffer isn't savings. It's not an emergency fund in the way financial advisors mean it. It's ammunition. It's the resource base that allows you to take intelligent capped downside bets without the existential dread that forces you back into symmetric trading. Every man I mentor, the first thing I tell him is this: Before you take a single asymmetric bet, build your chaos buffer, cut expenses, eliminate debt, which is a structural liability that eats your buffer from the inside. Live below your means aggressively for 6 months. Get to a position where losing 30 hours and $40 or 300 hours and $4,000 doesn't threaten your rent, your family, or your nervous system. Then, and only then, you are structurally positioned to play the real game. Reason 2. They don't take enough bets. This is the piece that kills me. A man will finally take one asymmetric bet. He'll build the product, launch the side project, pitch the client, and when it doesn't work, he concludes that risk-taking isn't for him. He goes back to the symmetric grind. He tells himself he tried, and it didn't work. One bet. He took one bet and used the result to make a lifetime decision. That's like flipping a coin once, getting tails, and concluding that tails is the only possible outcome. The sample size is insane. Asymmetric math doesn't work on one bet. It works on a portfolio of bets. This is the core of the 10-bet experiment. Here's the protocol. You commit to taking 10 asymmetric bets over the course of 12 months. Not 1, not 3. 10. Each bet must meet 2 criteria. 1, the downside is capped and defined before you start. You know exactly what you're risking. Time, money, reputation. And you've confirmed that losing the bet won't breach your chaos buffer. 2, the upside is uncapped or disproportionately large relative to the downside. A 10-to-1 ratio is the minimum threshold. You should be able to articulate, if this works, the return is at least 10 times what I'm risking. Why 10? Because the math of asymmetric betting requires volume to capture what Nassim Taleb calls the black swan, the outsized, unpredictable outcome that changes the trajectory. Out of 10 intelligently structured asymmetric bets, the statistical reality is this: 6 or 7 will produce nothing. Maybe a small learning, a useful contact, a minor skill gain, but no financial return. 2 or 3 will produce a modest, incremental result, something useful. Maybe a small revenue stream, a new client, a validated idea, and 1, maybe 1, will explode. Will produce a return so disproportionate to the investment that it retroactively pays for all the others 10 times over. That's not hope. That's math. The same math that every venture capital firm on the planet operates on. They make 50 bets knowing that 45 will fail, 4 will break even, and 1 will return the entire fund. The model works. It has always worked. It works in venture capital, in drug discovery, in oil exploration, in real estate development, and it works in your life. If you have the structural stability to sustain the losses and the discipline to keep placing bets when the first 7 produce nothing. Most men quit after bet 2. They lose twice and their ego can't handle it. They retreat to the symmetric world where failure is impossible because success is also impossible. They trade the pain of loss for the numbness of a ceiling. And they call it wisdom. It's not wisdom. It's surrender dressed in a sensible jacket. Let me walk through what a practical 10-bet year looks like, because this isn't theory. This is a protocol. Bet 1 might be a digital product. You identify a pain point in your industry. You spend 40 hours building a solution, and you launch it. Total risk, 40 hours plus $200 in tools and hosting. Potential return, recurring revenue for years. It doesn't hit? Fine. Move on. Bet 2 might be a cold outreach campaign. You identify 20 potential clients who could benefit from a service you can deliver. You spend 15 hours crafting personalized pitches. Total risk, 15 hours. Potential return, $50,000 in contracts over a year. Nobody bites? Fine. Move on. Bet 3 might be a content play. You spend 3 months documenting your expertise in a specific niche, building a small audience. Total risk, 3 months of evenings. Potential return, consulting leads, speaking invitations, book deals. Doesn't gain traction? Fine, move on. Each bet is designed, engineered. The downside is calculated before you begin. The upside is identified but not guaranteed. And the emotional framework is established in advance. This bet might fail, and that's part of the portfolio. You don't mourn individual losses. You evaluate portfolio performance across all 10. By bet 7 or 8, something interesting happens. You've built skills from the failed bets. The cold outreach that didn't land clients taught you how to write a compelling pitch. The digital product that didn't sell gave you a technical foundation you didn't have before. The content play that didn't go viral built an asset library you can redeploy. The losses are compounding into capability even when they're not compounding into revenue. And when bet 9 or 10 hits, when the math finally catches, you're operating with a skill stack that makes the win bigger than it would have been if you'd gotten lucky on bet 1. That's the hidden advantage of the 10-bet experiment. It doesn't just produce financial returns, it produces competence returns. Every bet, successful or not, adds to your competence stack. And competence, as I've explained in other videos, is the only foundation that evidence-based confidence can be built on. The man who's taken 10 bets in 12 months is a fundamentally different operator than the man who spent the same 12 months grinding asymmetric paycheck. Not because of outcomes, because of capacity. Now let me close with the piece that ties it all together, Sovereign Decisiveness, from my book, The Winter Sovereign. Everything I've described so far requires one thing that most men have been systematically trained to avoid: making a decision without consensus. The disciplined man who stays broke doesn't just take the wrong bets. He waits too long to take any bet. He polls his friends. He asks his wife. He reads 14 more articles. He joins a Facebook group to see what other people are doing. He outsources his conviction to the crowd because he's been taught that consensus reduces risk, that checking with others before acting is the responsible, mature thing to do. In a stable era, consensus is a reasonable heuristic. When institutions are functioning, when the rules are clear, when the game isn't changing, yes, ask around. Get input. Make the group decision. We are not in a stable era. We are in the fourth turning. The institutions are failing. The rules are being rewritten quarterly. The game your father played doesn't exist anymore. And in an environment of institutional collapse, consensus is the most dangerous risk you can take, because consensus is, by definition, calibrated to the old game. The crowd is always playing the last war. The committee is always optimizing for conditions that no longer exist. And the man who waits for the group to validate his move will always be too late. Sovereign. Decisiveness means you act on the math, not on the committee. You calculate the downside, you confirm it's survivable, you assess the upside ratio, and you move without permission, without validation, without the 15-person text thread that makes you feel supported, but costs you 3 weeks of timing. The fourth turning rewards speed, independence, and the willingness to be wrong in the short term in pursuit of being right in the long term. Every asymmetric bet you delay by 6 weeks of consensus gathering is a bet where the window might close, the market might shift, the opportunity might evaporate. The math doesn't care about your process. The math cares about whether you place the bet. I'm not telling you to be reckless. Recklessness is taking uncapped downsides. That's not what we're doing here. Every bet is engineered, every downside is known, the chaos buffer is in place, the math is clean. What I'm telling you is that once the math is clean, the only remaining variable is whether you have the sovereignty to act on it without asking the crowd for permission. That's the equation. Asymmetric risk math to identify the right bets, the 10-bet experiment to generate the right volume, structural stability to survive the losses, and sovereign decisiveness to pull the trigger before the window closes. Stop being brave in your heart and illiterate in your math. Learn the equation, run the experiment, and stop asking for permission to bet on yourself. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. It keeps the motor running. And if you'd like to learn more, check out my books on Amazon or click the links below.